Hey everybody, welcome to another cooking episode. I hope you're doing well. I'm shooting this on Black Friday, so happy Thanksgiving. Whether or not I saw you, I hope you had a great holiday. One of my favorite things to do on Black Friday is get discount turkeys at the grocery store. There's always a bunch left over because the stores almost always over order. And if you go in the morning, you're gonna find a bunch of options that are normally really reasonably priced. Now, when I went into Kroger this morning, which is our local grocery store, we had several fresh turkeys that were on sale for 99 cents a pound, which is pretty good. But what was really amazing is there were several of these 20 plus pound turkeys on sale for $5 total, which is nuts. This is a 21.6 pound turkey, and I got it for $5. Now, the downside to that is I have to cook it pretty much within the next 24 hours because the sale date is tomorrow and you don't want to mess around with, turkey potentially getting old and bad. But that's okay because there are quick ways to handle cooking fresh turkeys in a short period of time. One of the big ways to do that is by spatchcocking the turkey. The big issue that you run into with big birds, and one of the reasons why I don't cook with big birds that often. Normally when I buy a turkey to do on Thanksgiving, I'll cut it off at about 12, 13 pounds, because rarely am I feeding more people than that. And I find that the bigger the bird gets, the harder it is to cook it evenly. Spatchcocking helps to fix that, because what you're basically doing is you're taking a pair of kitchen shears or poultry shears like this. You're cutting the backbone out and you're flattening the bird. And then you brine the bird in a dry manner, meaning you take salt and spices and essentially cover the outside of the bird, both bottom and top. You let it dry a little bit in the fridge just overnight, and then it's ready to go on the grill or the smoker in the morning. Now you need to have a big enough surface to be able to cook a spatchcocked turkey, which is normally pretty big. But if you've got that, if you've got an egg or a smoker or even just a Weber grill, you've got all the makings of a really, really good meal. So I'm gonna walk you through this process from beginning to end, what I do when I'm spatchcocking one of these birds. One other thing I'll note, I bought two of these because, they were over 20 pounds and they were $5 a piece. So it feels like time to experiment, right? And we're gonna eat all of that meat down the line anyway. So what we're gonna do with the second bird is cut it up for parts. And we're gonna smoke those parts individually. So instead of having the whole turkey in one spot, you're gonna basically have two legs, two thighs, two breasts, two wings, and then the back area. And honestly, this may be the best possible way that you could cook turkey. Everybody's really obsessed with doing a whole bird. And there's reasons for that. It's presentationally very impressive. You get the opportunity to bring this huge thing out and carve it on the carcass. But in reality, the turkey is not the type of animal that you should be cooking uniformly across the board on, because the thighs are different than the breast. The breast is normally a lot thicker. That's where most of the weight on these big turkeys comes from. The wings are cooking at a different temperature. So when you cook the whole thing at once, what you're basically doing is inviting failure, because you've created a situation where you've got different cuts of meat that you're trying to cook on one carcass. And almost always that's how you get either dry breast or you get undercooked dark meat. Both of those things are bad. So we're going to show you both methods. Spatchcocking is a way to keep the whole bird in one piece, but not worry too much about the way that it's cooking, because you've got it spread out a lot more evenly. And then cutting it up into parts is probably going to give us much more flavorful cuts of each of those types of meat. So let's take a look and see how both of those things are done. So here we have our bird. Now we've done a couple of things already, and a lot of people forget to do this. You want to obviously take the gizzard bag out of the back here. You also want to pull the neck out. I've already done both of those things. Eventually what we're also going to do is cut this fat off, because we don't really need it for spatchcocking. But we're just going to go ahead and do the main spatchcocking part here. And what we need to do is first and foremost flip the bird over, okay? So sometimes people are confused by where's the back on the turkey? This is the back. You can always tell when the wings kind of angle up like this. This is all back meat. So what you want to do is get a good pair of poultry shears. These are heavy duty. They come apart for easy cleaning. And we need to get in here and start cutting out the backbone. And this is something where you need some hand strength in order to actually make it happen. You want to just start cutting straight along, and you can hear bones crunching because that's exactly what's happening. What we're doing when we spatchcock is we're taking out the backbone and then we're flipping the bird back over so that we can get a nice flat or relatively flat surface. I'll cut through some of this surface fat here. You can see once you get this started, if you're going in the right direction, it's a pretty easy to find channel across the back of the bird. And it takes a little bit of elbow grease, so to speak, but having the kitchen shears makes it a lot easier. You could do this with a knife, but ultimately I think it's easier for you to get down there and just pull everything out. You don't want to throw the back away once you're done with it. You're going to use that for stock. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this up and I'll show you what it looks like. So we've gotten the rest of the backbone largely cut out. I had to come down here, cut some of this fat off, and then I started cutting from this side. So I'm kind of meeting in the middle. So the last couple of snips should get the backbone completely off. Incidentally, this part of the turkey is kind of the hardest part to cut out of this with the spatchcocking process, but you can see, there you go. That's the backbone. And you can see what you're left with if you zoom in here. You've got basically a perfectly bisected turkey on the interior. There's still some leftover frozen pieces that we're going to clean out. What we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to flatten it out, and then we're going to start to season things both inside and out. So what I've done is I've cleaned out all of the ice that was in the canal. I've cut out some of that excess skin and fat, both from the back and from the front. And now we've got, you can see very clearly, here's the breastplate. These are the two breasts. Here's the thighs. Here's the wings, and then the legs are underneath. So what we're going to have to do next is break this turkey essentially in half. So the easiest way to do this is generally to flip it back over and get it on a surface where you can get it flattened out. Try to get there you go. Did you hear that? That cracking sound. My wife just flinched. You want to really break the backbone because what you have to do is basically get it so that instead of the bird pointing inward, the bird is pointing outward. There we go. So the whole goal with this, if you take a look, is you want to have the breast pieces in the middle by themselves so that he can get to them. You want to have the thighs and the legs by themselves so that he can get to them. And then you got the wings by themselves as well. So you've got all of the different sections of the bird capable of getting their own heat source, capable of cooking at their own temperature. Still not as ideal as if we were to cut this thing up completely in pieces, which we'll do later. But what this allows you to do is put this whole thing on the grill, flip it as needed, and even move certain parts, like the dark meat, over the fire while you keep the breast meat out of the fire. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to sprinkle quite a bit of salt on the surface along with some other spices. We're going to do the same thing to the underside. In fact, that's where we're going to start. If you want to look at what it looks like on the underside, this is basically it at this point. So, we might break down a little bit more of this, but essentially this is where we want it to be at this point. We're going to sprinkle all of this with spices. We're going to cut off some of this visceral fat. And then we're going to let it sit overnight so that it's ready for us to cook in the morning. All right, so we've spatchcocked the first bird. We covered it with spices. It's sitting in the fridge, and the skin's going to dry out a little bit before we cook it tomorrow, which is what we want. Now we're going to go to the second bird, and I mentioned we were going to cut this up for parts. Now, one of the things that I think everybody struggles with, and I did for a long time, is how the heck do you cut up a turkey? A lot of people are scared of even carving turkeys. But you got to keep in mind, the turkey physiologically is just a big chicken. And chickens aren't that hard to cut up once you understand how the parts fit together. So first things first, the easiest part to take off is the leg. And you got to keep in mind that when you start to cut into the leg, notice how that's all skin. So you want to go ahead and chop that down, because this really shows you where the leg and the bird come together, or the rest of the bird, I guess. The leg is part of the bird. What you want to do is try to find the joint located about here, and you want to try to cut around it as much as possible. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Sometimes what I do is just break it like that. That tells me exactly where the joint is located. Then I can go in and get behind the joint and cut down. And sometimes I don't hit the joint exactly, and I just have to cut through the bone. Other times it works a little bit better. Of course, those are the times I wasn't filming. But there we go. See? That's basically where you want to get the cut, and just get through there, get it across, boom, drumstick. Put that aside. Now, you should probably go ahead and just stick over here and take care of this thigh while you're at it. So the thigh is a little bit harder to cut out. But again, as long as you know where the lines of the bird are, which is basically like right here along the body cavity, you should be able to figure out where the joint is. Now when I tried to pop that leg out, you can notice I already popped the thigh joint out. So now it's just a really simple process of cutting around it, getting the skin, making sure not to cut yourself, slicing down, and boom, there's the whole thigh. See? Well, hey, guess what? Now we've got half the bird taken care of. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, and then I'll come back and we'll look at the breast. So here we have the thigh and the leg on both sides taken off. So what we're left with is the breast, the back area, and then the two wings. So there's a couple different ways you could go at this point. What I normally like to do here is flip the whole carcass over, because it's a lot easier to get at the wings this way. And again, the wings, kind of like the thighs, they all revolve around a particular joint. In this case, the joint is right here. So sometimes it's helpful to just cut around that until you find the spot where everything fits together. And once you do that and get underneath it, it's a pretty simple process. Look at that. That's a big, well-carved wing section. We can do the same on this side as well. I'll just cut through here, find the end of the joint, and you can see it's a little deeper than you would think sometimes, but you can just cut right through that. Make sure to point the knife away from you, and boom. So now we're left with the breast and the back. Generally speaking, to try to keep things easier, what I'll do here is just break the whole back section off. Slice it off. This is pretty good meat. There's just not a whole lot of it, but that leaves us with most of the breast cavity. This is where you're gonna have to do some extra work. What I like to do is just cut this straight through. If I lose a little bit of breast meat on either side, I'm not too worried about it because it makes it a lot easier for me to carve up the core breast item itself. Get a little bit too much off of there, but I'm gonna go ahead and slice this straight up and off the carcass so that it stays with the bulk of the bird. Same thing over here. And then what we'll do is just kind of crack that off. So now we have a relatively flat surface to work with. Now, the breasts is a lot of meat, particularly when you get into these bigger birds. So what you may want to do is grab your poultry shears if you've got them, or a really sharp knife, and just go at it by cutting straight through here. That way you separate it into two. And then sometimes what I'll do, just to make it cook a little bit better, is I'll actually cut it in half again so that you're not dealing with such a huge solid piece of meat. But you can kind of go whichever way you want to go with things. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that. It takes a little bit of time. I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. So we managed to get all that taken off. We took the back sections, put them in the stock pot. We're going to make some turkey stock. But if you look down here, this is what the breast sections end up looking like. And you'll notice that what I did basically was cleave this breastbone right in half. Some of it was shears. I had to finish it off with the knife a little bit. But I've got two relatively equal and relatively big sections of breast meat, still with the bone attached. So again, what we're going to do with these, we're going to cover them with spices and salt. We're going to let them sit overnight. And then when we put our spatchcock bird on tomorrow, we'll also put these on. We'll let them cook at their own speed. And then they freeze very well, which means we'll have turkey for the next couple of months. Hopefully this was a useful video for you as you try to figure out what to do with extra turkey around the Thanksgiving holidays. Let me know if you've got any comments or questions. Go ahead and put them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch up with you next time.